Israeli troops have opened fire on civilians attempting to return to their homes under ceasefire agreements in Lebanon and Gaza, killing at least 22 people, including a Lebanese soldier and one Palestinian in Gaza. Dozens more have been injured. The killings come despite two ceasefire agreements allowing displaced civilians to return. However, Israel has blocked their passage, accusing Hamas and the Lebanese army of violating key conditions of the deals. In Lebanon, Israeli forces fired on groups of civilians heading back to their villages near the border, resulting in mass casualties. Video shows Lebanese citizens standing in front of Israeli tanks, waving banners and Hezbollah flags in defiance. Lebanese President Joseph Aoun condemned the attack, stating that Lebanon's sovereignty is non-negotiable. Lebanese soldiers attempted to escort residents to safety, but the level of destruction shocked those returning. Satellite imagery confirms entire villages along the border have been reduced to rubble by Israeli airstrikes. Some residents, like Deria villager Rita Darwish, describe returning home only to find nothing left standing. Meanwhile, thousands of displaced Gazans returned near a main Israeli checkpoint, hoping to return home after months of bombardment. Their return was delayed after Israel accused Hamas of not immediately releasing a hostage as part of the ceasefire agreement. Hamas responded by saying proof of life had been provided and accused Israel of using the hostage as a pretext to break the deal. Following the mediation by Qatar, an agreement was reached for Israel to allow Gazans to return home from Monday. Despite the ceasefire, Israel has continued airstrikes in Lebanon, with over 350 attacks reported, allegedly targeting Hezbollah infrastructure. Hezbollah has warned that failure to withdraw Israeli forces by January 26th could collapse the ceasefire agreement. Israel has also escalated its crackdown on Palestinian aid organizations, ordering the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, UNRWA, to vacate its headquarters in East Jerusalem before a complete ban on its operations. UNRWA, which provides essential aid, education, and healthcare to Palestinian refugees, has vowed to resist expulsion, calling Israel's action a direct attack on humanitarian efforts.
The 7 MPs who had the Labour whip withdrawn for refusing to back Sir Keir Starmer's removal of the two-child benefit cap may face further attacks from the party leadership. The 7, John McDonnell, Richard Bergen, Ian Byrne, Rebecca Long-Bailey, Imran Hussain, Absama Begum and Zara Sultana are currently being considered for readmission to the Parliamentary Labour Party. Party leaders have been urged by Labour right-wingers to keep the expulsions going, while others are urging the readmission of only the best-behaved MPs, by which they mean Richard Bergen, Ian Byrne, Rebecca Long-Bailey and Imran Hussain. John McDonnell may be specifically still excluded because of his participation in the delegation of protesters at the Palestine National Demonstration on the 18th of January. He and Jeremy Corbyn were interviewed under police caution after the protest. This is being used by McDonnell's critics as a reason to perpetuate his exclusion. Zara Sultana and Absama Begum are seen as two of the most outspoken of the 7, particularly over Palestine, and may be specifically punished if Starmer chooses a divide and rule policy. The government counter-terrorism scheme, PREVENT, is under fire again. In the wake of the sentencing of the Southport killer Axel Rudakabiana, who was referred to the PREVENT scheme 3 times without result, the Prime Minister has ordered a review. It's not the first time the failing programme has been investigated. Indeed, it was only in 2023 that William Shawcross delivered his investigation of PREVENT. Shawcross, an Iraq War hawk, was appointed in 2019 and his report was 2.5 years late. It concluded that PREVENT was focusing too much on far-right extremism and should refocus on its original target, so-called Islamist extremism. In fact, PREVENT had previously had to take more account of far-right extremism because this was the greater threat than the scheme had originally acknowledged. Now far-right referrals are 17% of the total. Those connected to Islamist terrorism are 13%. More than double the percentage of Muslims in the population. Children have been referred for the innocuous behaviour of saying Allah Akbar or mentioning historical caliphates in class discussions. Teenagers have been flagged for de-radicalisation simply for protesting against Israeli diplomats or wearing Free Palestine badges. Shawcross reignited criticism of Prevent as a programme that unfairly and disproportionately targets the Muslim community. A report from Amnesty International concluded that Prevent is fundamentally incompatible with the UK's human rights obligations. Amnesty documents how Prevent's vague criteria have caused stress, anxiety and a loss of trust in public authorities. Now the Southport killer, a loner from a Christian family, has once again shown that Prevent is largely ineffective in its stated aim. David Anderson, the existing reviewer of counter-terrorism legislation, will conduct the new review. But this is unlikely to be able to mend a fundamentally broken scheme by broadening the pool of people under suspicion to include loners in their bedrooms, as Keir Starmer described the new threat. The fundamental fault of Prevent was that it targeted an entire religion on the basis that some of its members might be terrorists. Trying to broaden the scheme to all maladjusted individuals is an idea bound to fail, especially when it is already clear that the far right are much more likely to be violent extremists.
Chancellor Rachel Reeves has unveiled a bold new plan to revive the UK's economy with a centrepiece announcement: the government's official backing for a third runway at Heathrow Airport. After years of debate and delays, this long-awaited decision marks a significant shift in infrastructure strategy. Heathrow, one of the world's busiest two-runway airports, has faced growing capacity challenges. The pandemic once threatened to put expansion plans on hold, but with passenger numbers now surging, the need for additional infrastructure has become critical. The proposed third runway, which would extend across parts of Harmondsworth, Sipson and Harlington, comes with a hefty price tag, potentially up to £63 billion.
This government has already given its support to expansion at City Airport and at Stansted. And there are two live decisions on Luton and Gatwick which will be made by the Transport Secretary shortly. But as our only hub airport, Heathrow is in a unique position, and we cannot duck the decision any longer. I have always been clear that a third runway at Heathrow would unlock further growth, boost investment, increase exports, and make the UK more open and more connected. And now the case is stronger than ever, because our reforms to the economy, like speeding up the planning system and our plans to modernise UK airspace, means the delivery of this project is now set up for success. So I can confirm today that this government supports a third runway at Heathrow and is inviting proposals to be brought forward by the summer. We will then take forward a full assessment through the Airport National Policy Statement. This will ensure that the project is value for money, and our clear expectation is that any associated surface transport costs will be financed through private funding. And it will ensure that a third runway is delivered in line with our legal, environmental and climate objectives. Heathrow themselves are clear that their proposal for expansion will meet strict rules on noise, air quality and carbon emissions. And we are already making great strides in transitioning to cleaner and greener aviation.
As part of this growth strategy, Reeves highlighted additional initiatives, including expansions at Gatwick and Luton airports, as well as the development of a high-tech growth corridor between Oxford and Cambridge, envisioned as Europe's Silicon Valley. While the government claims these projects will spark renewed economic growth and increase GDP by 4% by 2050, the proposals are expected to face fierce opposition. Environmental campaigners, local residents, and even some senior Labour figures, including London Mayor Sadiq Khan, have already voiced concerns. Nonetheless, Reeves emphasised the urgency of moving forward, promising new legislation to cut red tape and speed up infrastructure approvals. Projects such as redeveloping Old Trafford, reviving Doncaster-Sheffield Airport, and improving rail links between Oxford and Cambridge are all part of the government's ambition to reshape the UK's economic landscape. Labour hopes this expansive strategy will send a clear message. They are committed to growth, innovation, and bold decisions that will shape Britain's future. However, with fierce debates ahead and planning permission hurdles still to clear, the path forward is anything but guaranteed.
A US judge on Tuesday temporarily blocked part of the Trump administration's sweeping directive to pause federal loans, grants and other financial assistance. In a Washington, D.C. federal court hearing, US District Judge Lauren Ali Khan ordered the White House to not block funding to existing programs until February 3rd, a win for advocacy groups who said the policy would be devastating. President Donald Trump's White House ordered billions of dollars of federal grants and loans to be frozen, which could disrupt education and healthcare programs, disaster relief, and other initiatives. Earlier on Tuesday, a coalition of attorneys general announced they would sue Trump's pause of federal funding. 6 states, including New York, Massachusetts, and California, said the lawsuit was meant to preserve essential funding for Americans. Here's California's Rob Banter.
We will not stand by while the president attempts to disrupt vital programs that feed our kids, provide medical care to our families, and support housing in our communities. We won't stand by while the president breaks the law and oversteps his authority as outlined in our Constitution, a Constitution he swore an oath to uphold just 1 week ago.
The acting head of the Office of Management and Budget, which oversees the federal budget, said the money would be put on hold to ensure it aligned with the president's priorities, including executive orders he signed ending diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. New York Attorney General Letitia James said 20 states, including New York, were blocked from Medicaid's payment system, a public health insurance program for low-income people. The White House said Medicaid was exempted and no payments had been affected. Georgetown University law professor Stephen Vladeck said the funding halt runs afoul of Congress's legislative control of public funding.
This is a nuclear-tipped broadsword, and to allow this kind of program to go forward would not just have immediate, harsh, deleterious effects on all kinds of segments of society. It would really pretty radically reorient the separation of powers in this country away from the legislature and toward the executive.
Vladeck said he expects the administration to walk back the policy or lose in court. The US Justice Department, which would defend the policy in court, did not immediately respond to requests for comment.
Heavy gunfire echoed the streets of eastern Congo's biggest city on Tuesday. Rwandan-backed rebels entered Goma the day before, a dramatic escalation of a 3-decade conflict that has also triggered protests in the capital Kinshasa. But the rebels, led by the M23 militia, are facing pockets of resistance from the army and its backers. This social media video has been verified using previous footage of the area and satellite imagery, though the identities or affiliations of the troops were not confirmed. The violence has left, the United Nations said, many dead bodies scattered in the streets.
The humanitarian situation in and around Goma remains extremely worrying.
Jens Lerck, spokesperson for the UN's humanitarian office, said hospitals were overwhelmed.
We have reports of rapes committed by fighters, looting of property, including of a humanitarian warehouse, and humanitarian and health facilities being hit.
This violence in eastern Congo is rooted in the Rwandan genocide and the control of natural resources. The UN and global powers fear an escalation into a regional war like those in 1996 to 1997 and 1998 to 2003. Conflicts that killed millions, mostly through hunger and disease. In the latest diplomatic efforts to resolve the crisis, South Africa said its president Cyril Ramaphosa and his Rwandan counterpart Paul Kagame had agreed in a phone call on the need for a ceasefire. On Tuesday, the insecurity fueled anger in the Congolese capital over perceived foreign interference. Police clashed with protesters who attacked diplomatic buildings in Kinshasa, including a UN compound and the French and US embassies. This was the Rwandan embassy, its gates set ablaze. Rwanda has long denied backing M23, though UN experts have concluded that Kigali has provided significant manpower and firepower. The Congolese government and the head of UN peacekeeping have said Rwandan troops were present in Goma backing up their M23 allies. Rwanda has said it was adopting a defensive posture because of the threat posed to it by Congolese militias.
Dunque, la notizia di oggi è questa.
Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni said on Tuesday she was under investigation for her country's surprise release of a Libyan police officer wanted by the International Criminal Court. Meloni said in a message posted on social media she was being investigated for allegedly aiding and abetting a crime and for misuse of public funds.
Alla vicenda del rimpatrio del cittadino libico.
Osama al-Masri Najim was freed last week and flown home by an Italian state aircraft, just days after being detained under an ICC arrest warrant for alleged crimes against humanity. The ICC has demanded an explanation for his release, saying it had not been consulted over the decision. Meloni is under no obligation to resign, and being placed under investigation in Italy does not imply guilt or mean that formal charges will necessarily follow.
Non sono ricattabile.
In the video posted on her Facebook page, she said, "I will not be blackmailed. I will not allow myself to be intimidated." Meloni said 3 members of her government had also been placed under investigation: Justice Minister Carlo Nordio, Interior Minister Matteo Piantedosi, and the Cabinet Under-Secretary for Intelligence Matters, Alfredo Mantovano.
An Air Busan flight caught fire on Tuesday night at South Korea's Gimhae International Airport in Busan, just before departure to Hong Kong. Fire authorities confirmed all 169 passengers and 7 crew members were safely evacuated, with 3 sustaining minor injuries. The fire engulfed a 17-year-old Airbus A321ceo plane around 10:30 at night. Investigations are underway, with Busan Mayor Park Hyung-jun calling for a review of aviation safety.
We can't confirm the exact cause yet, but the fact that this big accident burned down the plane should be used as an opportunity to check the entire aviation system we have.
Tuesday's incident follows last month's deadly Jeju air crash in Muan, which killed 179 people. Some in the capital Seoul on Wednesday told Reuters the recent incidents had them anxious about flying.
In the past, there weren't any incidents, but these days there have been a lot of plane accidents for some reason. I'm a little nervous and worried about so many accidents happening, and I'm a little reluctant to fly on a plane.
Airbus said it was aware of Tuesday's incident and was liaising with Air Busan. The airline and its parent company Asiana Airlines did not immediately respond to requests for comment. Korean Air, which acquired Asiana in December, directed inquiries to Air Busan.
An Indian official says multiple people were killed and several more injured in a stampede at the Mahakumbh Mela festival in northern India on Wednesday. The Kumbh festival has been called the largest gathering of humanity, and tens of millions of people attend it every year. Pictures showed bodies being taken away on stretchers and people sitting on the ground crying. Others stepped over a carpet of discarded belongings left by people as they tried to escape the stampede. Dozens of ambulances rushed towards the riverbank where the incident occurred and where a Reuters witness saw several dead bodies. Officials said an initial stampede, which took place around 1 a.m. local time, was not serious, but its cause was unclear. However, witnesses said devotees trying to escape it were caught in another stampede at an exit. This victim said they were caught in the crush.
Suddenly, there was a huge crowd and we got stuck somehow. People started pushing aggressively and we fell.
The Kumbh is an annual Hindus festival that sees people pack into the city of Prayagraj over the course of 6 weeks. Nearly 148 million people have attended since it began 2 weeks ago. Pilgrims take a holy dip in a river to mark the festival's most auspicious day. Hindus believe taking a dip at the confluence of 3 rivers in the area absolves them of their sins and confers salvation from the cycle of birth and death. The royal bath was called off following the incident, but later resumed. Officials said a special crisis unit had been deployed to bring the situation under control, and rescue efforts were underway. Authorities had undertaken several measures to cater to the enormous crowd, including increased security and medical personnel, special trains and buses, and the use of AI for crowd control.
Serbian Prime Minister Milos Vučević resigned on Tuesday following weeks of anti-corruption protests that have swept across the country. These demonstrations were triggered by the collapse of a railway station roof in the city Novi Sad, killing 15 people. What started as small protests in the area ballooned to widespread backlash, with people turning out in their thousands in capital Belgrade to blame the disaster on corruption within the government. Vučević told a press conference he and the mayor of Novi Sad would resign, meeting the demands of, quote, some of the most extreme protesters. This now former PM is the highest-ranking official to step down. Both the Transport Minister and the Trade Minister had already quit, but that failed to calm the public outrage. Vučević blamed foreign interference for stoking the protests without providing evidence. The focus for many analysts now is how much this will affect the president, Alexander Vučić. His party easily won a snap election in 2023, but, having also been accused of bribery and criminal ties, has come under increasing pressure.
As gang violence in Haiti continues to escalate, access to healthcare is slipping out of reach for most people. For Haitian mothers like Sineas Leon, that means seeking care at hospitals in neighboring Dominican Republic.
Would
I have a child in Haiti? No, I would not. I had my child here. I don't know what the care is really like in Haitian hospitals. I don't think I would receive good care because of the government situation. There is no government in Haiti. There is no ruler. Our hospitals will never treat us well.
Haiti and the Dominican Republic share the island of Hispaniola in the Caribbean, but are divided by a heavily secured border, long-standing tensions, and an immense wealth gap. In Haiti, the healthcare system has been pushed to the brink. A UN report in October said less than a quarter of hospitals around Port-au-Prince are currently operational. That assessment came before a spike in violence in late 2024. That saw gangs shoot and kill journalists gathered at Haiti's largest public hospital. They had been there for a government press conference meant to announce a long-awaited reopening. Those plans have been put on hold. The capital's airport and ports have repeatedly been forced to shut down, prompting hospitals to warn of a lack of supplies, such as blood and oxygen. But while the Dominican Republic offers Haitian mothers access to relatively better healthcare, it comes with significant risks. The country deported over 2,000 Haitians in 2024 and nearly 15,000 in the first 2 weeks of 2025 alone. Authorities have pledged to continue deporting up to 10,000 people per week to manage the influx of migrants. Dominican politicians argue that the country lacks the resources to support the large number of Haitian migrants. Local doctors said many Haitian women are afraid to attend prenatal checkups and tend to arrive late at night or when they're about to give birth due to the risk of deportation.